Also staying with the engagements of day one, Prime Minister also held bilateral talks with the Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian on the sidelines of the BRICS summit. Discussions focused on India-Iran bilateral relations, including on the importance of INSTC and Chabahar port for regional connectivity. India's Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri said that Prime Minister Modi raised concerns about the situation in West Asia, stressed upon protection of civilians and the role of diplomacy in de-escalation of the situation.
President Pezeshkian had a fruitful discussion. This was their first meeting since President Pezeshkian's election as the 9th president of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Prime Minister congratulated him on his recent victory and reaffirmed India's commitment to deepening the age-old bilateral ties with Iran. The discussion focused on key areas of cooperation, particularly the Chabahar port and the international north-south transport corridor, which are crucial for enhancing regional connectivity and economic partnerships. In fact, seamless connectivity in the region was a theme of this meeting.
Let's go once again live over to Kazan, from where DT India's Arun Sharma and Jessica Taneja continues to stay with us live. They're there. Arun, coming to you first. Now, the overarching agenda of the summit under the chairmanship of Russia, given the timings of it, it's very, very important. It matters a great deal to President Putin. In general, a broader view, and in particular, expectations, what all India brings to the table. Everyone seems to be looking up to India, the global north, the global south, as well as Russia.
Absolutely. And you can, conclude this from the remarks of the Russian president yesterday when he said that we don't need translation, while interacting with each other, and the kind of chemistry that both the leaders were sharing with each other. So this shows a message that how bonded India and Russia are together, when it comes, to the bilateral relationship. Second important part, what India brings to the table. Well, India brings a lot of things to the table. First of all, India leads by example, and and India showcases it to the world. If you recall it, Sakal, that during the G20 summit, when the Russia-Ukraine crisis broke out, even at that point in time, nobody was talking about the fertilizer subsidy. Nobody was talking about farmers who were directly impacted by high fertilizers, because of the Ukraine conflict. But it was Prime Minister Narendra Modi who highlighted this during his intervention in the G20 summit, that that fertilizer prices are rising, and we need to ensure that the supply chains do not get disrupted. So Prime Minister Modi has become, or he's ensured that how India can become the voice of global south, and this is the way how India is becoming the voice of global south, and that is the reason why more than 24 countries, they want to become the part of BRICS grouping, because they think that their voices can be heard from the multilateral platform. Well, Jessica, would you like to add more on this aspect as well?
It's correct. BRICS offers a platform, a multilateral platform where you've seen in the recent past as well, countries have got together. And as you were pointing out, more than 24 countries have expressed interest. Of course, looking at an alternative, as I pointed out earlier, to the existing Western architecture, not necessarily for India, it's not necessarily being anti-Western, but non-Western, yes, and being part of various other multilateral groupings where it can pursue its own strategic interests, as is the policy of India, which is strategic autonomy. So going with that ahead, talking about economic integration and payment gateways, particularly when there were questions on the BRICS payment system. You heard from the Foreign Secretary yesterday who said that this is an erroneous, this is an erroneous idea of continuing to go with that payment system. There is no alternative to the SWIFT that the BRICS is coming up with. But yes, in the future, there could be trading in local currencies. That is a certainty, and that most of the nations do. And India's export, which has been to the global south, and integrating those countries into a framework of financial structure, which could, of course, allow them to have their own engagements, particularly with countries which are, no more developing, but countries like India, which are middle powers, and perhaps showcase the kind of heft on global stage. Look at India's payment gateway. So looking at India's payment gateway, the UPI, by now, Sakal, it is operational in more than 24 countries, and the RuPay card. Expect that to expand as well. Apart from the partner countries would be joining in, certainly BRICS as a forum provides India that momentum to move forward with its own economic agenda and more economic cooperation, even with the Eurasian countries. Now, this is particularly important. While the focus would be on the India-China bilateral relation, one should also look at how India takes its relationship forward with the Eurasian countries, especially given the recent engagements in the past.
Having said that, Jessica, can BRICS offer a counterbalance as far as the existing world order is concerned? And having said so, India is going to play a pivotal role, like for both of you. What are you picking up there?
So, see, Sakal, I mean, more than the journalists from the BRICS countries, the journalists from the Western countries are more in number as far as this BRICS summit is concerned.
Okay,
so,
that's interesting trivia. Yes.
So yeah, so that they're closely monitoring this entire situation because of the fact that the way the BRICS is gaining its momentum, and of course for the fact, Sakal, that as Prime Minister Narendra Modi says that we don't believe in countering any grouping. We don't believe in countering any kind of a grouping on the multilateral platform. Our idea is our own interest. And how can we become the voice of Global South? How can we become? Now, it is because of Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Sakal, you would remember that post-COVID, when India was hosting the G20 summit, before that, Prime Minister Modi did a Voice of Global South, whereby, he interacted with more than 100 countries, the Global South, and try to take their inputs as to what can be taken forward and how can their views be taken forward and can be kept on the multilateral platforms like G20. So after this, these countries of the Global South us have started to believe that our voices can also be heard, and therefore there is an aspiration globally that yes, we can also become part of some grouping whereby our interests, our concerns can be heard and that can be kept. And India is a prominent member as far as BRICS grouping is concerned, and that is the reason these countries are more than interested in joining a grouping called BRICS, whereby India is an important and integral part of it. As Prime Minister Modi back home in India says that Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, Sabka Vishwas, that means taking together a development for all. So, Prime Minister is also, reciprocating this on an international platform and globally, that how can we take the underdeveloped countries, the emerging economies together and can take forward.
Arun, the inclusion of, that reminds me, that point, both of you, the inclusion of African Union under the India's G20 presidency. In line with that, the other aspiring nations, there are 40 of them at least, who want to be part of the grouping. Just to put this in perspective, both of you, a considerable amount of focus in this summit is going to be the broader contours of what defines who is in and who is not. The expansion of the BRICS grouping or BRICS in a new category of the partner nations. What exactly are you guys picking up on that?
When it comes to the expansion of BRICS and adding new countries to the fold, you could look at the partner countries that would join in, the dialogue partners, because there are certain set criteria when it comes to joining BRICS, especially when it comes to economic status. Now, there have been various countries who've shown interest. You talk about Thailand, Vietnam. They have also expressed interest to join BRICS, given the kind of economic integration that is visible now. Look at the new development bank that was established, just about a few years ago. It has a contingency reserve arrangement of about $100 billion, out of which, apart from that, the BRICS Bank has also disbursed $30 billion of funds towards various development projects across the Global South. So, of course, the momentum is picking up. And when you talk about comparing that to existing world order or the World Bank or the IMF that also gives out loans, of course, it is significantly low. But look at the inception. It's just fairly new. You talk about European Union when it adopted a common currency, which is the euro. It took them 4 decades to adopt that currency. So at BRICS Summit this time, we're not talking about adopting a new BRICS currency, but certainly looking at ways where local currencies can trade. And that is already happening with many countries, especially India and Russia. The entire oil trade is in rupee ruble. So expect that to move forward. But apart from that, it is again not a challenge to the Western architecture, but definitely offers an alternative to allow inclusion of countries that have been left out, especially the developing nations who've reeled under the pandemic, who faced challenges because of the conflict in West Asia and also the conflict here in Eurasia.
Yeah.
So
Arun?
Jessica, just one more point to add here, Sakal, very quickly, because we're talking about common currency. The very basis of the common currency is trust. So until and unless there is no trust, we can't trade in common currency. So it is very important for a grouping to have all the members, the like-minded democracies and like-minded countries, to have trust amongst each other. And that is what this grouping is focusing about before having a common currency. Because, it looks very fancy that we'll be having common currency, but this cannot be achieved in 1 day or 2 days.
Right.
It takes time, but before achieving this common currency, there's a need to develop for, to have a trust. And that is what India is highlighting here, that yes, let's have trust. And India is showing it by example that the way we have done or democratized UPI, the way we have democratized technology to other countries, in a similar fashion, we can have trust. Because, if in the case somebody is buying something from another person cross-border, so if in case there is no trust, what is the surety of having or getting back the payment? And that is the reason you have to have a trust as a basis before having a common currency. And that is what India would be highlighting here, leading by example, showcasing it on the multilateral or this international platform.
Okay. Before I leave you both, a quick shift of focus on that important event of the day, Arun and Jessica, the bilateral between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Chinese President Xi Jinping. Jessica.
That's correct. That will be an important event to watch out for. Expect that to happen during the afternoon, right, Arun? And you've seen the build-up to that, Sakal. If you recall Foreign Secretary's briefing right before Prime Minister's visit to Russia, there was an announcement that patrolling points have been agreed will be reversed to what it was in 2020. There has been a disengagement. Earlier, it was said that 75% was done. And the rest, of course, yesterday was made clear that the agreement has been reached. And this is an important and a very significant development because this could potentially pave way for normalizing at least trade ties between India and China. You talk about the business community that has been affected the most with this diplomatic standoff, so to say. But it took a lot of effort by the Indian side, to make sure to arrive at this point. There have been as many as approximately 13 to 20, military level talks that have borne fruit now. So given the kind of effort that has gone into normalizing ties, but of course one has to tread with caution when it comes to China. We've seen in the recent past, in 2017 and then 2020, and also briefly in 2022, skirmishes have happened. So treading with caution and the contentious issue of patrolling still remains to be seen. But for the moment, we're given to understand that a consensus has been reached, an agreement has been reached, and let's wait for that potential outcome later in the evening with, of course, more information added.
Absolutely. So let me add one point, Jessica, here.
Sure.
So why China and India now coming together very shortly over here? Now, the way India's stature is rising on international platforms, specifically after the G20 summit, the world is, noting the